Welcome to the Human Function Performance Podcast. Today we're going to talk about the human function assessment, why the right plan starts with the right assessment. Oftentimes I get asked, where do I even start? Do I go do physical therapy? Do I need recovery? Which modality is right for me? Do I need functional medicine testing? I'm confused. The truth is, there's no universal answer. We have to ask the question is, where are you at right now and what are you trying to achieve? That's the human function performance journey, trying to determine where someone's at in this current moment. So that's where we look at a journey of understanding where do we even start. And that's the human function assessment. When we look at this assessment, we're looking at the person as a whole. What is it they're trying to achieve? Before we actually prescribe a plan, we want to know what are the opportunities? What are their goals? Where is this person at in this current place and time? What are we trying to achieve? And what's the best path to get there? Let's just not jump in and start treating without understanding currently where's the baseline and what do we have to work with. It's very important because most people don't understand this, but when they look at the assessment before action, you have a better game plan. If I just go do an action as far as, say, my knee hurts and I start doing a lot of strengthening exercises, you may temporarily feel better, but at the end of the day, if you're not looking at the full picture of what caused the actual knee pain in the first place, or just in general, what's going to give you the best outcome, you're going to be doing what I call chasing the symptoms. And that's where a lot of people are at. So as we look into this, we're always looking at what is the best outcome for you? How do we get you the result the fastest? But more importantly, why did this even happen in the first place? So as we're getting clear on this is something that we want you to understand. The human function assessment is very important. It's not just saying, oh, I got to go do a test. No, it's understanding what is the baseline that we can start with to give you the best outcome. So when we look at this assessment, we have three key areas that we want to actually understand. How does your body move? How does your body recover? And how prepared is the body for the life that you want to live? Meaning, what if I can go do a certain activity today, I don't want to second guess what I have the ability to do. I want to get up and go do it. So if we know the game plan as far as what's ahead of us, as far as the future events that you're going to be wanting to participate in, it gives us a clearer picture, but also gives us a clearer picture of understanding this is where you're at right now. This is the limitations that the body is presenting with. You know, a lot of times I think it's just understanding that there's more to it, not in a bad way, as far as when people, maybe not to say they don't have an intelligence of their own body or how the body works, but after doing this for 19 years and myself diving into it as far as really wanting to know and being curious about the body to improve the efficiency of how I feel, how I move, and how I perform, I always tell people it's like there's more to it. It's not saying like this is going to be more complicated. It's just when we start to just do superficial things, meaning just temporarily feel good things, then we're going to get a limited result. And not saying that these are bad things. Yes, you want to address the symptoms. It's just say you go get an adjustment, you go get a massage, or you go do whatever it is, maybe nutritional wise. Those are all good things. But at the end of the day, if you use that as your key point to fix the issue, you're missing out. You're missing out on the picture because what you're doing is you're treating the symptom. You're not looking at the compensation of the body because your hand dominance pattern. You're not looking at the actual movement of the body of what should happen. You're just looking at certain areas and realize that there's more parts of the body than we realize, whether it's more joints than we think about, more muscle groups, movement patterns, understanding what is normal, what's not, and just in general, what our bodies should be able to do for a certain activity that we want to do. Now, our mind a lot of time goes there and says, well, I'm doing this, but reality is a lot of times we're doing a lot of compensation. And that's where people fall short, is they're compensating throughout the body and all of a sudden they don't realize it, but they're offsetting the force in a certain case, whether it's movement or the pressure, or maybe just in general relying on another body part to take up the work for something else that's not doing the job. And that's why it's very key to understand from an assessment standpoint, what are the areas that are not actually doing their job so that we have more clarity. When you have more clarity, you have more autonomy to make better decisions, meaning you feel more comfortable to make a decision to move forward. If not, you kind of get stuck. And then all of a sudden you're in this little bit of a game going back and forth called the roller coaster. And something may temporarily work because it feels good temporarily just because you're giving it some attention, but it's actually confusing because it's a false positive, meaning, yeah, you temporarily made something feel better, but it wasn't really what addressed the main issue in the first place. So let's dive in. We look at, as far as options of when you're doing the assessment, like where do we start? Just know that there can be crossover. It's not going to be perfect saying, go do this first. Here in America, we're taught, just throughout school and the way our thinking is to be very, I would say, linear in a way. And a lot of times it's either through memorization, having a plan, understanding that, our way of thinking sometimes dictates how we process stuff. And, this is something I had to get over sometimes, looking at the way we review things is we need a little bit more critical thinking. We need to look a little bit outside the box, not get too stuck in, it's got to be in this certain pattern. And so, yes, it's good to assess patterns, but at the end of the day, if we always treat it that way, we may miss out on the full picture of some other options that we have around us to actually speed it up. So when we're thinking about this in general, what is one of the main key areas that we can actually do under the human function assessment to determine where you're at is performance physical therapy. So this is only one of the pillars as far as we're looking at assessment. So don't say that this is going to be where you start. I just want you to say, okay, or understand, here's where one of the key areas is. As we start to break these down, you get a little bit better picture of what each one and how it may relate to you. But again, I want you to have a bigger picture saying, okay, this sounds good. This is what I need, but also realize some of these pillars actually will be different areas that you'll need both, meaning like you're going to need to be doing both at once. It's not like a clear cut, I got to do this first before I go on to the next one, if that makes sense. So performance therapy is really, what does it assess? We're looking at more of the mechanics of your body. So this, I feel like, is pretty straightforward when you look at it from a physical therapy, performance therapy standpoint. We're trying to assess the body where it's at from a system standpoint, your musculoskeletal system. And when I say musculoskeletal, I'm talking about your muscles and your joints. How does your framework, how does it line up? Do we have the ability to move at certain joints? What the normal movement that should happen? Do you have the strength to perform a certain activity? Your symptoms, what's bothering you? What's keeping you from achieving certain things right now because of that limitation? So, what we're looking at evaluating is your movement quality, your joint mobility, the alignment, positioning, which a lot of people just, look at as far as posture, compensation patterns, which is a big thing, not realizing the majority of stuff we do throughout the day, we're compensating using more full body than we realize, to your balance, coordination, and just in general movement in all three planes. This one's huge because I know a lot of times it's easy to think like we're active and we're doing stuff. And I've been there before. We're working with professional athletes. They're super active. They're very obviously athletic for their position or their sport. But at the end of the day, it still goes back to the basics. If we're not doing all three planes of motion, meaning what your body should do from a movement standpoint, those joints don't go through the movement. You're not connected with your nervous system quite as well. And as you add time on, that's where things start to tighten up, combined with your dominant pattern, right versus left-handed, that pulls you in and locks you in. So you're limiting your ability over time to either move into those certain motions to gain that strength to then achieve the actual activity you want to be able to do because of the movement that's required dynamically, or just in general the balance because it gets thrown off either from alignment standpoint or from the nervous system not being able to connect. So really what we're asking is, where's the movement being lost? Where are you compensating? What are the patterns? Where are the symptoms coming from? What's causing a symptom based off your actual alignment? Because many symptoms are simply the body's response to an underlying movement dysfunction. So that's why I want to have people understand that if you don't fix this or you don't address this, then you're going to keep compensating throughout the body. So by just doing one thing, for example, if I just go do an adjustment somewhere, and you don't fix the pattern of how your body's actually working together as a team, then you're going to keep chasing it, meaning you're going to have to keep getting more and more adjustments. And as much as, again, I believe in going and getting adjustments or doing the massage, I think these are all great. And I think you definitely need to learn to play the game for your body and how you manage it. But again, at the end of the day, if you're really trying to get the best answer or the best outcome and you're not addressing these other areas of the body, it's going to be a never-ending game for you. And that's where a lot of people over a period of time start to rely on trying to find the next supplement to feel better because we're all trying to address our symptoms. Whether it's through supplements, medications, injections, surgeries. And then it just, as you start to see this game over a period of time, it all compiles and adds up to where it limits your activity level. And you need to have a better plan or you're going to have to deal with these results. And so I think it's right now just understanding what are your options. And if we don't do a good assessment leading up to this, you're just going to jump in to start doing certain activities, trying to address the symptoms, but you never fix the root cause, the problem that caused in the first place. And so then it's just a never-ending game. The next one's going to be looking at how do you function better? What does your actual performance functional medicine look like? So when we look at this, we're not talking about, well, let's just go jump into functional medicine because we think it sounds good and cool and, we can start throwing stuff at us to make us feel better, look younger, that kind of stuff. No, I'm talking about from a physiological standpoint, how is your body actually functioning? Because many times we come into a situation and again, as good as you could be at doing the physical therapy part, or the exercise part, if your body is not at a position physiologically to conduct like it should, you're going to be delayed in your results. And so we want to understand how that looks from a standpoint of how well is your body functioning? Are you having, what are the symptoms what's going on right now? Is that because of the actual injury or dysfunction you had from the physical therapy, or is it more of an internal part? So how efficiently are you recovering? When you think about the activities you're good at, it doesn't mean you have to go be doing sport activities workout wise. It's just your activity that you're doing that maybe caused the body some inflammation. How well is your body responding to inflammation? Are there nutritional deficiencies? This is a big one. Are hormones, inflammation, sleep, stress, or metabolic health influence your performance? We need to understand from a deeper level what that looks like if we really want to get the best outcome. And yeah, it sounds overwhelming at first, and it can be because there's a lot of moving pieces of the body. But again, if you look at it from a systems approach, and that's why I tell people always go back to the basics, start broad, then go specific. If you can look at the systems and how the systems in the body are working together, you can speed the game up and you can get a more efficient answer quicker. That way, a lot of the symptoms that the body's presenting with that are either secondary or tertiary to the other stuff going on in the body, all of a sudden aren't coming top of mind because those are starting to take care of themselves. The body's really good at going to work for you. And if you let the body go to work for you, you can speed stuff up to where you're not having to deal with so many symptoms at once. You just got to keep looking at the bigger picture. What's the biggest domino that you can knock down? So this may be more specific stuff like lab testing, blood work, genetics, lifestyle evaluation, being honest with what activities you're involved throughout the day, from eating habits to your sleep, your recovery, nutrition. So just basic stuff, but at the end of the day, it's very powerful. And I know a lot of times mainstream has it to where people get so caught up in the details of certain ingredients or, certain modalities, stuff like that. It's just, again, we want to understand a lot of this stuff could be good for one person, but not for the other. And I, for example, over the years, I worked with a nutrition company and not realizing, but the supplements I was taking was actually causing my own symptoms. And so that's where you as a person can get better at this as you get more clarity and focus, understanding the blueprint of your body, your genetics. How is it set up to respond to what you're putting into your body? Again, someone else may take the same product or eat the same food as I do and get a totally different result because of their blueprint, their genetics, how it breaks down in the body. If we ask better questions, we get better answers. So if we can go in there and start looking at, from a blueprint standpoint, how is your body functioning, get a good clear picture of that, see where it's at from a lifestyle standpoint, epigenetics, which is just saying this is how your body's presenting based off the genetics you have, meaning what lifestyle things are you doing right now that are giving you the results, and then that's where you do the testing from lab blood work to say, okay, here's where my hormones are at. And this is where you're going to get a lot more detailed specific on, how is the cardiovascular health to, how the aging process of the body to, in general, your electrolytes. A lot of times it's more, again, I say looking deeper into the body, it's saying, even though we may be doing the things that we think are right, if your genetics or just in general, your system as far as the body works, it's not getting to where it needs to be, then results aren't there. And that's where I think a lot of times too, most people think that, well, I'm taking this stuff, so I'm good to go. They check the box. It's easy to check the box, but reality, nothing really happened. Meaning we took the supplement, we took the medication, you took whatever it was, the nutritional food that you was told was good for you. But again, if it's not getting to where it needs to be, or your blueprint, your body is not breaking down like it should, we're going to fall short in the results. So the body is limited by movement, but it's also limited by physiology. So we have to look at it again, which phase are we in, and or both, that are keeping you from getting the results. The next is performance training. This is really looking at a different question, like how can your body now perform at a higher level? So we look at strength, you look at power, endurance, agility, coordination, just ability to do more dynamic activity. And this is why we call it athletic activities. Doesn't necessarily mean you have to label yourself as a athlete, professional athlete, but I feel like at the end of the day, we're all athletes. You're all actively moving unless you just sit at home all day and don't do anything. Again, that's some people's choices. But at the end of the day, if you want to live an active lifestyle, you want to feel better, you got to get moving. And so now we look at, when you get to that point though, what can we do to go above and beyond just the baseline? Maybe it's work related. You got a certain active a job that requires you to be physically active, or I think of it too, sometimes you got a job that makes you get in a lot of different positions. Being in physical therapy, I have to be mobile, or maybe you're in a whatever the position is with your job, that you have to be in on your knees or be able to rotate or climb or whatever the activity is. If your body can't be able to get there, then it's going to be tough for you. Or maybe you just need more strength. And this could go crossover because, again, systems cross over, not just physically, but mentally, but you need more strength power. So it could be strength power in your muscles, strength power in the brain. So when you train and adapt yourself at with these various systems, it can relate and correlate to that next level. So I always think of it more of along with the body by design. And if you're trying to achieve a certain framework, meaning like your look, your physique, you can train your activities, meaning like with your exercises can be conducted in a way that relate to the actual physique that you want. There's different muscle groups. I would say if you want the bigger, bulkier look, you're going to train certain specific exercises, different reps, duration because of the bulkier look that you're training for. Or if you want that more endurance look, again, that's going to be a different style of training for those certain muscle fibers. There's a mixture of what they call aerobic, anaerobic exercise will help determine that as far as the timing, the duration. You can also look into more specifics as you're starting to train this. So if I, for example, have a high stress job, maybe I want to plug into some interval training because now, again, going back to the physical relates to the mental, you can start to cross over in your system. So you start to train and you get your body to adapt at these different levels now, as not just from the physical work, but then to the mental. Maybe it's not stressful. Maybe it's just a lot of work. Maybe you just stay busy. So it's more endurance training. So I believe having a mix of everything is actually the most important. But at the end of the day, if you want to get strategic about this and really get clear, then this is where we dive into the assessment on, okay, what is it that exactly you have to do throughout your day? What are you trying to achieve? Maybe it's a certain activity or something you're training for. And then what outside of baseline can we do now to pour on the gas? And that's how you actually perform better, is with performance training and understanding that the goal isn't just simply exercise, and it's actually being strategic on what we're looking at and preparing your body for that sport, the career, the hobbies, or just in general everyday activity. And next one is actually really important to me. This is a one that, I feel like myself, including a lot of the people, always kind of put off to the side. And really over the last few years, just really dove into this because I realized how important it is. And that's performance recovery. This is not about just feeling less sore. This is actually taking all the stuff that you're working with and understanding how well your body should adapt. Because many times we just kind of, again, chalk it off to aging, say, well, this is normal because I'm this age or I did that activity. And sometimes, yes, that can be partly true. But a lot of times it's just the lifestyle. It's going back to simply like we're talking about earlier with the genetic testing. Genetics most times is 25% present in your daily life. The rest is epigenetics, meaning how you actually live your life and what you're doing, whether it's the diet, the stress, different activities that's causing us to present a certain way. So same thing with recovery. If we get really good at evaluating your recovery habits, how well you sleep, which is the most powerful recovery tool out there, simple, easy, cheap, you just got to really pay attention to it. So your stress levels, the nervous system regulation, that sympathetic to parasympathetic, the tissue recovery, and then your workload management as far as what your body can adapt to as far as physical versus, I'd say like a more movement type phase. So if I'm going heavy intensity one day, then I need some time to recover and then go into more. You can still do some movement, but not, you're not trying to constantly just keep beating the muscles up, which I did that for years, just thinking that was the only way to stay stronger. Reality is just more of a nervous system thing. But you live and learn once you have a lot of injuries. So recovery also helps determine which interventions may actually support your goals. And because we may be looking at different things for you. I could say the three main things that someone needs to survive is oxygen, magnetism, and light. And at the end of the day, when I start to base my bigger principles off of what are the big things out there, the number one column, basically biggest ideas that you can think of when it comes to your foundation and your values and what you really truly you basically is going back to your home base and saying, well, if this is true, everything else has to fall under these categories. And that's where you're at. So you could be looking at, okay, well, I want to recover faster. And I'm doing a certain activity that requires me to do a lot of movement. I get inflamed. And anyways, you can start to get more strategic on this and say, well, that may be great for a hyperbaric chamber because now I can cross over multiple systems. I can affect your nervous system. I can affect the musculoskeletal system and the cardiovascular system all in one modality. And that's the way you need to start to think. It's like, okay, well, if I'm doing this activity, or this is my baseline where I'm at, and this is where I want to go. Now, how can I affect all the major systems? You're just, again, you're knocking out that bigger domino. What are the bigger items that make the most impact? And that's really where you're at, just understanding leverage. And that's the point here. You got red light therapy, infrared sauna, compression, vibration. These are all great modalities. And we could all sit here for hours saying how great each one is, and the more in depth, like how this gets to a certain part of the body. But again, it's understanding like where your body's at right now, which one's going to benefit from which one. And then we look at your life factors, whether it's time versus cost, your ability to do it. Many things I think sometimes it comes down to a time thing. And so for me, I look at things in a time frame. First off, if you look at the circadian rhythm, sun up to sundown every day. This is where you should really get strategic, because I understand the circadian rhythm. Then you can start playing the game of what do I do daily? What do I do weekly? What do I do monthly? What I do quarterly, and then what do I do annually? Sometimes the simple stuff is you're going to do your basics, eat healthy, focus on your sleep, talking about daily movement, just some basic stuff that you exercise that you should pay attention to. Then there's things that you may do weekly. For me, that could be the hyperbaric chamber, partly because of the time commitment, but then also because, it's something I feel like is a great recovery tool. And at the end of the day, yes, I only have so much time throughout every day to plug into it. Now, could I do it every day? Yes. But, just for my schedule, it works out once a week. Then I look at something that's monthly. That could be for me, the ozone therapy. It's a little bit more intense. It's a stronger detox. So I want a little bit more time to either recover from it because of the effects of the detox, but just in general, the way I feel and how it works with my body. Now, for you, it may be something that's weekly. So again, this is where it's just looking at the person as an individual. And then I think quarterly, what are you doing quarterly? This could be something that we think of. Maybe you're doing maintenance testing. You're getting another assessment. You're getting retested, maybe in a certain area of your life. And then you're trying to measure back, like, okay, over the last 4 months, 3 to 4 months, how has my body changed? Then you have this better game plan to stay on top of stuff. Or maybe it's something that you're looking at doing, from I'd say from a diet standpoint. Maybe you tested certain things and you want to see how your body's responding at those times. So it could be blood work, lab work. And then there's stuff that you do annually. Again, this could be all of it, where it is more the in-depth testing, more blood work, lab work. It's, again, maybe it's something that you're going through different phases of your journey. It could be performance therapy, meaning you don't have to be hurt, but you're just getting your body realigned, readjust it for the next phase of your life that you're going to be going through or went through that year. Who knows? Maybe it's you're training for something, or maybe you're overcoming something. And so this is where you can start to think in time frames and really expedite, and also have a great game plan for your body when it comes to getting the results you want, and not playing the game of catch up, but you're being more proactive. So these disciplines, they work well together, but one of the biggest misconceptions in healthcare is that you only fit them into one category. And that's just not the case, because we're looking at this and I'm saying, okay, when I started this off, I was talking about these don't just mean you're going to go in one phase or the other. Think a little bit more complex and saying we do these assessments because it's trying to determine which one is right for you. Performance therapy, performance functional medicine, performance training, performance recovery. But there's could be crossover. You could take someone with shoulder pain. They may need the performance therapy just to restore the movement. You may look at performance recovery because of the inflammation. You may be looking at performance training to rebuild strength and resilience. So it doesn't mean that they have to be one phase and another. It's just, again, trying to give you the strategic game plan to say, how do you get the best result, the best outcome, so that way you're not continuing to deal with this over a period of time. Someone with chronic fatigue, they may be like performance functional medicine, trying to look at their physiology. Someone's going to be, maybe they have recovery strategies to improve sleep and the nervous system regulation. Maybe it's progressive training to rebuild that capacity. On the other hand, you have someone who's training for a marathon. They're going to need performance training because, how do you get the body to respond to this type of intensity over a period of time? Recovery optimization. How do I optimize my body to adapt to this high level of stress? How do I get ready to actually go the next day and run right again? Periodic movement assessments to make sure that you're keeping your body in alignment so that you're not getting off and getting confused signals when it comes to the symptoms you're experiencing. The point is, this assessment doesn't just put you in a box. It actually builds your roadmap, because now you're not just going in and saying, oh, I've got knee pain, just go do therapy on me. Well, I can, but at the end of the day, again, it's like, if we're not assessing the body as a whole and saying, okay, maybe it is. Maybe that's all you need is the therapy. Or you say someone comes in with back pain. Maybe there's some underlying stuff in there. Maybe it's physiological stuff that's going on in their body that they're not paying attention to, that's actually the bigger picture, really, because it's offsetting the hormones, the blood flow, to the point where how the nervous system affects certain muscle groups that stabilize the low back because your organs are under stress, that all of a sudden you're going to continue to deal with back issues because you never fixed the underlying issues at a deeper level. And that's where I want you to start thinking, is knowing that, yes, it is complex, but when you start with the bigger picture and you really understand the body as a whole, you can look at the systems and you can put your framework together and say, you know what, these leverage points in the body are going to give me the best outcome, not just chasing the symptoms. So your current stage really just does determine your starting point. Am I looking at restoring the body because I've got pain, inflammation, I know my alignment's off? That's usually a given, honestly. And this is where I tell people, is like, don't get discouraged. Everyone has this whenever we do the assessment, but your dominant pattern is going to offset your body head to toe. And you're going to have these discrepancies throughout your body. So as good as you think you're doing at form when it comes to working out and moving, you're going to be compensating some. And it's just one of those that it happens over a period of time, so our body gets used to it. So the compensation keeps happening to a point where it's so subtle, but certain parts of your joint at a deeper level are offset that you're never going to connect fully with the nervous system. Thus, you have limited actual contractility throughout your body. You're not utilizing your body to the full capacity, and you're always going to be delayed in your performance. So that's what leads to injuries. That's what leads to discomfort, the symptoms you're experiencing, but also just your performance being at a lower level. And that's what we're trying to look at here when we're looking at optimizing your system. So you want to optimize your function when it comes to how your body is going to work for you at all levels, whether it's the muscles, whether it's your organs, just in general, your physiology. And then you want your performance to be at a higher level, whether it's strength, endurance, intensity, your ability to perform at certain levels. And the maintenance, what are you doing to maintain all the hard work you just did? And I say not just maintain, but to thrive. You want to keep understanding the body as it keeps changing. The body doesn't stay stagnant. Our minds sometimes will, but our body keeps changing. And then longevity. What habits and systems are we building to make sure that we can continue to move in the right direction, to be active and independent for years? You don't want to skip these stages, you progress through them. So again, it's not like I need to do one thing and then go to the next. No, it's understanding how they collaboratively work together. And that's what the human function assessment creates for your strategy and your game plan. It's your blueprint, it's your roadmap, it's understanding where you're at today, which systems need the most attention, and what discipline should lead you there. We can't just, again, be too closed-minded and think, I just need this one thing. Now, from a realistic standpoint, which usually comes down to it, money, time, energy, then yes, you may have to tailor it to certain ones at first, but at the end of the day, I don't think it's as complicated as most people think. You just need to, again, look at going back to the human function assessment, saying, this is where I'm at, this is my baseline, what is appropriate, where should I start? And I think that gives you a lot of clarity right there, because if you can, again, go in there, take those leverage points, and get some big wins, look broad, again, you're going to take care of a lot of the symptoms your body is experiencing because you set the body back into a better position. So it's physical therapy. Sometimes it's functional medicine. Sometimes it's performance training. Sometimes it's recovery. I wouldn't say don't think you can't do them all at the same time, but don't feel like you have to either. So I don't want you to get stressed about this, but I do want you to understand that there's a bigger picture, and for you to understand how your body moves, how it functions, how it performs, but more importantly, how to recover and maintain the actual activity level that you've been working for so long. And you don't want to, again, just jump to conclusions and say, my back hurts, I want to go just start doing some strengthening exercises. Again, you're in a dysfunctional pattern. If you just go do strengthening exercises, which everyone's taught to do, core strengthening, then all you're doing is temporarily making things feel better, and you never fix the pattern, and you get stuck with the symptoms, meaning you're chasing symptoms over and over, and it becomes a delayed result. And that's why we have the human function assessment. We want to look at your baseline, meet you where you're at today. What are the opportunities that present? What systems can we get collaborating together? And what's going to give you the best outcome when it comes to improving your overall human function and performance?